High in these Georgia mountains lived a people who could not bear daylight, pale, moon-eyed, and gone. This marker remembers them. It stands beside a mountaintop wall no one can explain, built, some say, by their hands. There was only one way to catch them, the old stories say, a night of full moon. And when that light broke over the ridge, a whole people came stumbling out of the dark, half blind, running. This is the story of the moon-eyed people. Around the year 1100, the story says, the Cherokee came east into these mountains and did not find the land empty. A people already lived here, their towns tucked where the Hiwassee and Valley rivers run together, near present-day Murphy, North Carolina. They were short, the legends say, pale-skinned and bearded, with wide, light-colored eyes, and those eyes could not bear the sun. In daylight, they were nearly blind, so they lived by dark and worked by night. The Cherokee watched them move through the moonlit woods and gave them a name that lasted for centuries, the Moon-Eyed People. Some say they lived in the caves that honeycomb these hills, coming out only when the moon was high. For a time, perhaps the two peoples shared the land, but every version of the story ends the same way. In war. The Cherokee, the legend says, learned the Moon-Eyed People's weakness, and they chose their moment, a night of the full moon. When the light grew too fierce for those sensitive eyes, the Cherokee struck. Blinded and panicked, the Moon-Eyed People broke. They fled west, into the mountains and the dark, and vanished from the land, or so the story goes. The marker on Fort Mountain remembers an even darker ending. Not expulsion by the Cherokee, but annihilation by the Creek. Either way, the Night People were gone. But 700 years later, in a farmer's field, something of them came back. In the spring of 1841, a farmer named Felix Ashley was clearing land near the town of Murphy, where two rivers meet. His plow struck something solid. Buried in the soil was a carved stone unlike anything he had ever seen. Two small figures joined together, flat faces, no arms, and those enormous, unblinking eyes. He hauled it home on a sled and leaned it against his well house, where it sat, half forgotten, for generations. It passed from hand to hand for over a century. Only in 2015 did it finally go on public display. Today it rests in a museum in Murphy. 3 feet of pecked soapstone, and one stubborn question. Who were they? For generations it was only that, a tale, passed mouth to mouth. Then, in 1797, it reached a printed page. A Philadelphia naturalist named Benjamin Smith Barton set the legend down in a book on the origins of America's native nations. He had it secondhand from a Georgia officer, Colonel Leonard Marbury, who had heard it from the Cherokee themselves. The Cherokee, Barton wrote, found the land held by moon-eyed people who could not see in the daytime, and these, he wrote, they expelled. Barton had a guess about who they were. He thought them an albino race, pale and blind in the light of day. He was not alone. John Sevier, the first governor of Tennessee, told a stranger tale still. Sevier claimed an old Cherokee chief, Oconostota, had told him the mountain forts were raised by white men who came from across the Great Water. White men, the chief supposedly said, who had crossed the Atlantic and landed, long ago, near the coast of Alabama. It's a haunting account, though the old chief had died years before Sevier ever wrote it down. The record is tangled from the start. A century later, the ethnographer James Mooney gathered the Cherokee's own memories and heard echoes of the same lost people, a race, his informants said, very small and perfectly white, who once lived north of the Hiwassee and long ago fled to the west. And there was one thing more the legend had to explain. 100 miles south, On a Georgia mountaintop, there is a wall. It zigzags along the crest of Fort Mountain for nearly 900 feet. Heavy, unmortared stone, stacked by unknown hands. Seen from above, it snakes from cliff to cliff, never taller than a man, studded with 29 pits whose purpose no one has ever explained. Archaeologists date it somewhere between the years 500 and 1500. Beyond that, they cannot say who built it or why, but the local legend never doubted. The Moon-Eyed people built it, they said. A last defense against the Cherokee closing in. The state set a bronze marker on the mountain in 1968. Its last line concedes, "The true answer may never be unearthed." So who were they? For 200 years, people have tried to answer, and the guesses have grown wilder with every telling. The most stubborn theory made them Welsh, the lost colony of a prince named Maddox, said to have sailed here 3 centuries before Columbus. The idea ran so deep that Thomas Jefferson reportedly told Lewis and Clark to watch, on the road west, for Welsh Indians. Others tied them to the Melungeons, Appalachia's own mixed ancestry mountain families, whose true origins are a mystery all their own. And plenty of visitors, staring into that statue's flat face, have reached the strangest conclusion of all, that they were never human. But look closely at the record, and something troubling surfaces. The oldest Cherokee tellings never mention a skin color at all. The whiteness, the blue eyes, the lost white race, was added later by Barton in Philadelphia and a Tennessee writer named John Haywood, and that small addition did a quiet harm. If a vanished white race built the mounds and the walls, then the native peoples had not. But they had. The archaeology is plain. The great earthworks of the South were raised by Native American hands, Mississippian, Adena, and others. There is no trace of a pale European people in these mountains before Columbus. No lost colony, no bones, no proof. Some scholars offer a quieter, deeper answer. The Seneca historian Barbara Mann sees in the Moon-Eyed people a memory of the Adena, an ancient mound-building culture of the Ohio Valley, keen watchers of the stars, who drifted south and blended with the Cherokee's own ancestors. In that reading, the Moon-Eyed people were never invaders or strangers. They were an older thread in the region's own long native story. And the Cherokee still tell of the Yunwitsunsdi, the little people, small spirits of the woods, a legend that braids quietly into this one. Which brings us back to the 2 figures behind glass in Murphy and the arguments that still circle them. Some see the Moon-Eyed people, some see the 2 rivers that meet at Murphy, some see the little people, some see something not of this earth. The museum's own director says it plainly, everyone who looks decides for themselves, because no one truly knows. The wall still zigzags across Fort Mountain, the statue still stares from behind its glass, and the mountains keep their secret. Whoever they were, an albino band, an ancient people, a memory or a myth, they have outlasted everyone who tried to explain them. 200 years on, they are still out there in the story of these hills, seen best, as always, by the light of the moon. Thank you for watching Historical Marker Stories. Please like and subscribe for more great content.